Well, hello everybody, welcome back to Succeed with Omid. Today I'm going to be talking about something a little bit different, and just really quick before I do, I'm not a psychiatrist. Okay, I have a degree in psychology, but if you're actually dealing with something pretty severe, this is not the place to be kind of dealing with something like an emergency. Definitely go see somebody that really is clinically trained to deal with that sort of stuff. And on that note, this channel is going to start to evolve a little bit more. Don't worry, I'm still going to put fitness videos up. I've got one coming up tomorrow on the Russian twist and how to actually make it a useful exercise instead of sitting on your butt. But the idea is that if there's emotional stuff in our past or stuff that we're not necessarily balanced with, I've been doing this for 8 years, and I see, I can hear people telling me a story and then see their body move. And I started noticing about 4 years into what I do, if I can actually start to deal with the emotional side of things, their body moves in a different pattern. It's a very strange thing, right? People have sometimes heard the phrase, the issues in the tissues. And this is one of those things. So, without further ado, Mr. Ryan Holiday, motivational speaker, meditation guru, stoic philosopher extraordinaire. We are A to Z thinkers, fretting about A, obsessing over Z, yet forgetting all about B through Y. And if you haven't heard Ryan Holiday speak or read any of his work, I highly recommend it if you're in the experimental self-development mindset. He's a phenomenal, phenomenal writer. But I want to break this down a little bit. Before I actually insert, a lot of the useful, tactful sort of stuff, I just want to break this down. Right? This is a very reactive place to be. Right? In Stoic philosophies, we tend to start thinking about this idea of if something happens, I don't have to have a reaction immediately to it. Because what ends up happening is if something happens, and it's happened before, the outcome might be different this time. And what ends up happening, he's trying to say, most of us tend to think, okay, cause and effect. The same thing's going to happen because it happened before. If you even just think about statistical probabilities, because one thing happened before, the same thing happening the second time isn't any statistically higher, right? It's still the same probability. You flip a coin twice, and heads comes up both times. The third time, the statistical probability of it being heads or tails is exactly the same as the first two. But we tend to think that it's higher for some reason. And that's just kind of human nature that he's talking about, right? I added this part in here, right? This sympathetic arousal. You'd think that this is actually the opposite. Our brain tends to think about simplifying things, not using as much bandwidth, right? If I wear the same shirt every single day, it tends to be like, oh, okay, I'm not using this decision fatigue sort of thing, and I have more bandwidth for other things. But here's the thing. Our sympathetic nervous system is all about cause and effect. If something happens, I do this, because I don't have time to think when a tiger's chasing me. I need to just go. And what ends up happening is if I'm making decisions based off of that, there is zero actual context in the middle or any information or time to think. The sympathetic system does arise just a little bit. It's counterintuitive, but the science is there. Last thing I'll say, it's also very judgmental, right? If something happens, it's going to do this. And it's not based off of any facts, it's based off of my old programming, which we're going to get into down here. But let's talk about the Stoic way of doing things and the actual analysis paralysis way of doing things, right? Both of these are double-edged swords. This is a non-reactive. This is a way to kind of put space in between something that happens. I'm going to take a breath, step back from that situation, and try and gather all of the contextual related stuff that I possibly can, right? And this is where people kind of get stuck. If I'm trying to make a decision to do something and I need all of the pieces in front of me first, we're human. We can't know every single thing that's going to happen. And if we're waiting for that to happen, that's where the analysis paralysis comes in. We have to have a little bit of context, yes, but we can't wait for all of it to happen. This is also very parasympathetic because there's a rest component to this. Before I actually act on something, I'm going to take a beat. I'm going to get back inside of my body and I'm going to feel what's going on. If there's another person there, I might ask them a ton of questions to try and figure out what's going on with them too. It's very soothing, it's very parasympathetic. It's very calming to try and figure out, what's going on, the presence, the awareness, the moment, whatever you want to say. That is actually, it's counterintuitive to think that much. It can be parasympathetic to us. It's also very objective. It's factual, right? We're going based off of, instead of previous programming, if A happens, therefore Z is going to happen, I'm now saying, hold on a second. A and B are just here, but where is this going? right? I'm actually going to try and observe all of the facts that I possibly can to end up getting an educated guess on what happens with Z. Now, one last thing I want to cover before I get into a real-life example in my life is this is something from clinical cognitive behavioral psychology, right? This A, B, and C model. There's an actual activating event, right? Something that actually happens, the A from up here. Then there's this middle step before what I put in parentheses over here is the Z, the actual consequence. What ends up happening, let's say this is a couple coming into therapy. He said this. And the therapist's like, and? Well, that person, based off of previous events, past programming from whatever it's going to be, school, parents, past relationships, any types of religious, mumbo-jumbo that gets stuck in our heads. I'm not bashing on religion, but there's a lot of programming in there. Well, what ends up happening is that they're automatically thinking of this. They're skipping the B through the Y. And in their mind, Z has already happened. Versus, if I come home from work and I'm tired, right? I work out for a living with people. I deal with lots of complex cognitive behavioral problems with people. I have to be a therapist most of my day. And, it's taxing. And especially as an introvert, I come home, John Gray talks about this all the time in his books, I need about 20 minutes of veg time. I need to be able to come home and get back into myself instead of other people's problems. Now, where am I going with this, right? I'm getting married soon. My fiance is one of the most loving, heartfelt people in the world. I am so blessed to have somebody with that much positivity in their life. But when I come home, she wants to love on me. And her mind is a feminine yin source energy. She wants to give me all of the love in the world. She's missed me like no other, and she wants to give me this. That's her programming for happiness, right? He comes home, I'm going to give him love, and therefore I'm going to get love back. I don't give love back. I hate that I don't, but I'm a man. And what ends up happening is I need that 20 minutes of downtime. I need that little bit of time to unwind and relax and recover. And in my mind, most of the time, I can remember, oh yeah, there's this context thing, and that's who I'm about to marry. And I can give her that love, and I can say, hey, listen, baby, I need just 5-10 minutes. I'm gonna go put this stuff down, I'm gonna change, I'm just gonna go, lie for a bit, then I'll come back, we'll do dinner, how was your day, all that kind of stuff. But sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes I'm in this A to Z. And if all of a sudden she does something, immediately rushes me to try and give me attention, all right, to simplify it, all of a sudden I go into, she's violating my personal time, she's not respecting my space, and I will react accordingly. And that's something that we need to balance, right? I can't constantly be doing that, and she also needs to constantly be thinking a little bit about, hey, maybe he needs some time, let's ease into this. Let's ask some questions of each other. You know what, was this a tough day? How were your clients today? What was your life like? How did your poetry sort of stuff go? How did the nonprofit event that you're running happen? Was it a good event? Was it a bad event? What kind of mood are you in? All of these are contextual, relaxing questions. And we need both, right? If I'm going to have a business opportunity that comes in, it might be an exploding offer. It might be a 24-hour sort of thing, right? Most of the time I say no to those because I don't like pressured sales. But at the same time, some of them might be million-dollar ideas. And if I say no, that's a huge opportunity cost. But likewise, if I make a stupid-ass decision because I didn't think at all about any of the possibilities going wrong with the deal, I might be $1 million in the hole, right? Another opportunity cost. So the scales between these two things we need to balance. And I invite anybody watching this video to do the same thing in your own life. Start to think about decisions you've made in the past, let's say 3 months, and think what would have happened just as a thought exercise, right? Don't beat yourself up about this, but what would have happened if something that I made as a snap decision I had waited and actually asked a bunch of questions on to understand first, right? As Malcolm Gladwell says, seek first to understand before to be understood. But likewise, if you've had analysis paralysis before and you switched to this A directly to Z sort of thinking, what would be the worst that happens, right? Would your actual fears be 100% probable to come to pass? Probably not. So it's just an interesting thing to kind of balance out between these two things, and something I just wanted to share with the world because it's been on my mind a lot the last couple months. I personally have been in a lot of this analysis paralysis mindset, and it's been eye-opening for me to kind of really think about a lot of this sort of stuff. I'm fortunate that I had the parasympathetic time to do it, because now I'm putting this into the world. And I wouldn't have done this 2 months ago because I was afraid that people would unsubscribe and hate me and throw all sorts of nastiness out there. But you know what? This is what makes me happy, and I hope it makes you happy too. So that's it for today. I hope this information was very helpful to you guys. As always, have a happy and healthy, wonderful day. I'll talk to you next time.